Hey everyone! I hope your summers are going well. So this week I'm going to be a little bit of a rebel, and I'm not going to follow the E100 series. Sorry, Jordan. So I've been on an Old Testament kick lately, so you get to come with me this week. So I just finished reading Joshua, and the thing that originally stood out to me was how a lot of times we have that idea of like an Old Testament God who's very cruel and punishes his people a lot and is very harsh, versus the New Testament God who's more affectionate and loving, how we perceive him. But, I mean, it's the same God. The people back then just needed something different. He had to show his love in a different way. And it's really cool to see, even through all that destruction and all the deaths and everything, that's all still out of love, that God's doing that for his people. So we see in Joshua 5:6, the Israelites had moved about in the desert 40 years until all the men who were of military age when they left Egypt had died, since they had not obeyed the Lord. So when I first read that, I was like, that's so cruel. Like, God just killed an entire generation off. And if you read down a little bit further, it's because they did not keep their promise. And God promised them that if they didn't obey him and their promise to obey him, that they would never see that land. And so he had them wander in the desert that whole time to give their sons and daughters the chance to be that next generation to get that land. And even though he killed all this people off, God is so faithful, and he kept his promise. And he didn't blindside them with it. He told them ahead of time if they did not obey him, that they would not see that promised land. And he was true and faithful to that. But they're wandering for those 40 years. That kind of reminds me how sometimes we can go through our entire lives wandering in spiritual dryness and never really see the fullness of God and the promise and all that he holds for us. So I don't know if you know too much about Joshua or not, but let me tell you. So Joshua was not a young man at this point in time. He had followed his entire life being an assistant to Moses. Can you imagine spending, 60 years standing by someone's side, being their assistant, to never really get that recognition, which I know a lot of people, that's what they want. And neither Moses or Joshua wanted that recognition. That wasn't their point in doing this. They were faithful servants of God. But that just amazes me that Joshua served his entire life, just completely humble, obedient to the Lord and to Moses. And when God called on him, Joshua was ready. So it wasn't that he just wanted to be this great leader and God's like, okay, here you go. He'd spent his entire life preparing for this. And when God called on him, he was ready. And to me, that just is a constant reminder and just really fills me with a lot of encouragement when I'm doing mundane tasks, or sometimes I don't want to say the coffee getter, but you know what I'm talking about, something like that. Like you feel like your work's not really fruitful, or what you're doing isn't going to make a difference. But that could have been how Joshua felt. And then look at how much he did. He conquered so much land, and all that was because he was faithful and because he believed in God and his promises and what he would do for him. I think that's a really good encouragement for us. I don't know what everyone's doing for their summer jobs or where they're at, but just to keep reminding yourself that right now, it's okay to be Moses' assistant. Like, you want to be that assistant to someone and to serve and to learn from them and to gain all that knowledge and wisdom and just enjoy that time and that service. Because when God calls you to be Joshua, you want to be ready. And by being the assistant of Moses, you will be ready to be a Joshua. So the majority of Joshua is the conquering of different lands. And God easily could have just taken all these lands on his own. He didn't need to have man and the Israelites and Joshua go ahead of him and conquer it. God could have just taken it and said, here you go. But I think that's just really cool that he has them do that. And we read, every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you. So what they took, they had to fight for. And even though God promised them that they would win those battles, they still had to put in that effort. And I just think that's really cool in the sense how we should parallel that. We know that God has promised us eternal life and love, and he doesn't promise us that it's going to be easy or that there's no one that's going to stand up against us or oppose us, but he promises that he will be with us and that we get to live that out through God's promise, and that we're ready for his calling wherever that may be. And all we have to do is just put in that effort. We aren't promised that it's always going to be easy. So God calls to Joshua is be strong and very courageous. So Joshua is called to a boldness in God. And that just stood out to me that it exposes there's a weakness in Joshua, which I think it's really cool to see how great of a leader he is, but to have God also reveal to us that he had weaknesses, that there was a need for such a command. Like God had to tell him, like, be bold and be strong and be very courageous. Because even a great leader like Joshua needed encouragement. And that's what we're here for each other for, is to provide each other with that encouragement as well, to be great leaders and to be bold and courageous in our faith. And that courage isn't in ourselves, that comes from God, and that we need to be confident in God. And we can be self-confident, but it has to be in the abilities that God gave us and trusting in him and knowing that we have the things that we need. He's given us the abilities and the wisdom and the tools to go out into those situations. And whether it challenges us or puts us in something completely comfortable and familiar, that we can have that confidence in God to accomplish whatever he calls us to do. So that's Joshua for you. Sorry it wasn't in the New Testament with the E100. Sorry, Jordan. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to the next video.